I'm here with Ellora Patnaik, a very fine Odissi dance artist and actor. And Ellora Patnaik has won international acclaim as a dancer, actor, and has performed across North America and India, as well as in the United Kingdom and Iceland. She's been teaching dance and performing professionally since 1986. Ellora runs Chitralekha Dance Academy with her family. She holds an associate's degree from the American Academy of Dramatic Arts, where she was a member of the company in her third year, which was in 1994. Ellora has been very active in the Toronto theatre community and has performed for Rustic Arts, Nightwood, Tarragon, the Toronto Fringe Festival, Soul Pepper, and Shakespeare in the Rough. Thanks, Ellora, for being here with us.
Thanks for having me, Bhagashri.
So, as part of the Sadhana series, I've been talking to the gurus who have been assessors in this process of professional development for emerging artists in the South Asian classical arts, as they're identified here in Canada, which include Bharatanatyam, Kathak, tabla drums, and in 2016, you were actually an assessor for our series that was held at the Harbourfront Centre. And you're an all-round artist. I mean, you're an accomplished Odissi dance artist, having pursued it here in Canada, learning from your mother, but also performing widely in India, and as well as acting. You're not only a great actor on the stage and have all the experience I've been talking about, but people can see you on TV, and we have been watching you over the years, and so you have such an all-around career, not just on stage, but in front of the camera, and in teaching at where at your studio, which is now located in Brampton, another suburb of Toronto. But I know that you spent a lot of time in Burlington, Oakville, and you've seen the scene in Canada for South Asian classical arts develop, evolve a lot over the years, and we see it changing constantly with more activity, new kinds of directions with contemporary work. But really, it's always been kind of happening like that over so many decades. And I wanted to talk to you first about how it was like for you when if you could paint a picture for us, because when you were studying Odissi at home and then later in India, or you can tell us about the process of even going to India. It was a very different time. Now we see a lot of activity, but I think 30 years ago, it was a different picture of immigration, of awareness, and even awareness about Odissi as an art, because there has always been a predominance of especially Bharatanatyam. Now there are a lot of schools in Kathak, but Odissi dance was, I would say, out of all the Indian classical arts, especially at that time, must have been a very different a scenario in terms of how to bring awareness, how to even tell people how it was different from Bharatanatyam. So could you take us back, give us a little window of that time? Because I think it's really important for people like myself especially too. I know that to pursue something like this at a time when there were no role models was a very different time, and I think that for emerging artists today, it's really great to make the link of how South Asian classical arts started in Canada, where they've gone. But you're a perfect example of someone of the second generation, I guess, if you were born in Canada, of somebody who's taken it and really developed it.
Yeah, okay, well, that's going way back. A little time travel. When I started, it almost feels like I fell into it in a way because I learned from my mother. And a lot of us have learned from an art form from our parents, you and your father. Like I think of that, and a lot of my other colleagues started with their parents. Um, my mother, Chitralekha, Guru Mom, she had started a school training people on a very small scale. And I think I just watching her teach the older children, I'd been around that, surrounded by it, constantly with music and with dance. And I think that it just sort of happened. She had no intention of, teaching me dance or anything like that. I just sort of, the bowls just started coming, and it just sort of was there. And I was about 5, 6 years old when that happened. Um, and like you had mentioned, immigration, I mean, there wasn't a very diverse community then. I mean, we had family friends and stuff, but artistically speaking, there was really nobody around. And we'd started in Toronto when we moved into the GTA area, Oakville, Burlington, and only recently we came to Brampton. But at that time, there were small, what we called multicultural programs happening, and a very small community, like just maybe the McMaster University Students Association would have a program, or the ODS Association, and there was Caravan, had started then, and I think we've all danced in Caravan at some point. So it was happening, and it was a very alien thing, I think, to the mainstream audiences. And I didn't even use the term mainstream until later on. But I think it was more of a community involvement rather than thinking of anything professional at that time. And alongside that, I was always doing plays and dramas at school and stuff. But for me, I was just dancing. I mean, Ma would teach me something, and then it just sort of snowballed. And we would go visit India, and I would watch her working with her gurus at the time. At that time, she had worked with late Guru Kerochan Mahapatra, and later on after that, Guru Gangadhar Pradhan. All have gone. They're all gone now. And that's another thing with that. I would hear about them from a very small age, and for me, they were like almost like phantoms. Like I would see pictures and stuff, and when we would go to India, I would see them. And so for me, it was almost like an extracurricular activity until I got into my teens. Then it started really picking up, and then I started teaching. And I think with teaching, I developed a lot with my form and my own personal journey as a dancer. Teaching really helped me. My students taught me, I felt. And so the area where we were like the only ones. And especially with Odissi, predominantly only Odissi, being an Odia family, and Ma having learned from all the gurus, they were all together at one point. All of them were together before they separated, and they had their own institutions, or they joined the music college, the Utkal Sangeet Mahavidyalaya in Odisha. Guru Pankaj Charan Das and Guru Deva Prasad Das, they were in the college, and they stayed there. Guru Kerochan Mahapatra, he had his own way of, he taught more on a global level. I mean, he's very, very famous. So when I went to India and learned after I graduated from high school, I didn't go to college or university right away. Because Guruji Kerosar was here, and he had seen a piece of my dance. At that point, he had been at the research center, the Odissi Research Center in Bhubaneswar. The government was run by the government, and kids used to go there, students used to go there on stipend. They would get a scholarship. But I went there, and we paid, foreign students pay their way over there. But I was able to spend a good year there and learn at the research center and spend time with them, which was great. So learning here was one thing from my guru and Ma, and going to India and learning was also a totally different new world for me. But it gave me a great experience that being in my own environment with my own roots, being Odia, that for me was probably the big threshold of being able to cross over into the professional world. So that really didn't happen until I graduated from high school.
And it wasn't just you; it was you along with your brother, Devraj.
Yeah,
right? So
that's right. Devraj, my younger brother, he started out as a percussionist. He started out as a tablaist, and then a pakawaj player. And so he and again with him, he is his music. Music is just in him through and through. He's a music composer, and he loves to direct. He does choreograph dance as well, but the dancing merged in underneath his music. So he's always run on parallel tracks with his music and his dancing. So he had the Hindustani influence with the tabla, and then the Odissi influence with his pakhwaj, and it was great because we don't have, it's very rare to have a percussionist in the house. Well, I don't have to say that for you,
Well,
but
it took me a long time to get there too, so I know how important it is.
it is. It's amazing because like when he sits down and he like grabs the drum and plays, it's a totally different feeling. Then I get a feeling like I'm back in Odisha
Mhm.
with my gurus or even with the musicians, and it's a different feel altogether than just like playing the music and rehearsing. And
Mhm.
even in India, it's hard now to get the musicians are very busy, and they're doing it's hard to get a musician to come to rehearse. You have
Well,
or
they're not very busy right now, but
not now. Are any of us?
they just can't come now.
Yeah, I know.
It's a
It's
different
it's it's been
scenario
a
right
challenge for everyone all globally, and I mean, we're all in it together. But yeah, so like yes, so Devraj, when he got to when he could have taught when he was 8. I mean, he was an old man in a
He's
child's
like a
body.
he was born to be a grandfather
Yeah,
or
he's
a
just a yeah, he's been grandpa
grandmaster.
since he was 3. He's been a grandpa. So, and now he's like everybody's grandpa. But yeah, but with him around, it was a great advantage, and I loved taking advantage when I could. And then, then then he from the dance academy, we had Chitralekha Dance Academy, and then from there we branched out, and Devraj founded the Chitralekha Odissi Dance Creations, which became our company,
Mhm.
and we were able to get students who reached a certain level to perform, in the company shows, and it became more recognizable because in the beginning, Odissi was very. It was kind of like the sweet child in the corner. You've got Bharatanatyam and you've got Kathak and you've got Kuchipudi and even Manipuri. And I think it was just because there weren't there's a way to present, the classical dance. I mean, people would see it and they'd be like, oh, it's really beautiful and it's so colorful, but I wish I understood it. And so we thought, how do you cater this type of alien art form to make it familiar or make it more understandable to people?
Accessible, yeah.
Exactly. And so I thought that it would be really great to take your authentic traditional Eastern form and merge it with Western theatrics,
Mhm.
with what we have here. That doesn't mean to taint it or bend it in any way. Keep it authentic, but present it in a way that I don't like to use the word spoon feeding, but in a way you kind of had to do that in the beginning, with the coming out, when we come out and we explain stuff. It's all about the clear communication and the art of storytelling, especially. People love a good story. The
Mhm.
abstract dance that we do is one thing, the nritta, but when you're presenting nrutya, you have to have a good story and you have to understand that story
Mhm.
and present it in a way to somebody that they can understand. And I think that's the key of also being a good teacher. You've got so many different kinds of people in front of you, students, but not every student is going to understand what you're saying. So you have to find a way to explain it to them how they will be able to understand. I mean, I think of that as good parenting too, good
Mhm.
parenting, good teaching, but and the same with your audience, and then they like you more because everything is more familiar.
And I think, obviously it sounds like also you always wanted to be an actor as well when you were growing up. It wasn't just that you wanted to be a dance artist, and that aspect of storytelling and how to express on stage and make it real to people, like bring them into that world, right,
Yeah.
is something that goes hand in hand. But I wanted to also just touch on this aspect of when you went to India to really train hard. And I had that experience of it's always like I find that juncture point between school and university, or it's like around that time that you
Yeah,
realize, okay, this is the moment. If I'm really going to, spend the time to do it, it's got to be
yeah,
now, because otherwise later, then it's like you get on with your university degree and all that, right? So,
yeah.
and then Vineeth has the same experience of really just immersing yourself. And I mean, I think it must have been, I've never been to Odisha, but just seeing the temples, I mean, it must have been like, completely getting into that world of what inspired what inspires Odissi. But can you tell me a little bit about, because you already had it in your home, right? And you were teaching, and that's such a great thing that you were doing it, that you had students who were taking it seriously and doing it rigorously. But what it meant for you as a dancer, your body, going to India and deciding that, like, I think there's an aspect that we know as dancers, the magic of what we're doing and why we love doing it. But how important was it for you to do it at that point in your life, and then to think of what is going to come in your future, like where you want to go with it?
Yeah. I've never really had a plan, you
But
know.
you knew that you wanted to do that, though, at that, like, you
I
knew
did
that you needed
well
to take that time.
at that time, like I'd been to Odisha, like we'd gone for like our usual visits. The
Hmm.
family visits always ran with Ma's agenda with her dance. We never went to India and she
Just
did
as a
not dance.
vacation.
It was always, she would spend time with her guru, or she would spend time working on a couple this, she was going to work on this. So she went a couple of times on her own, left us behind. She's like, okay, you guys, do you have the winter? I'm going for at least 4 months. She always went for 4, you know how it is. So, um, but for me, I think it's because I'd been there before, on a personal visit, as a family visit, but going there the um, with the plan to dance, to learn, felt very warm and very familiar. It was already familiar. Like I kind of knew what to expect. Once I stood there in front of Guru Bade Guruji Kerosar,
Mhm.
and he's sitting there, and everybody is like, we're standing in class. Then I knew, okay, this is it. But it always felt like, you go to the Konark temple. I've got a Konark wheel behind me, and when I go to Konark, or I would go to Puri, there was always a familiarity. Even though I'm born in Toronto and I'm raised as a Canadian kid, I I knew that it was always there for me. Um, so I always felt scared, happy. There were all these emotions going, and intimidated, thinking maybe I'm not worthy. Um, but I wanted to do it, and I loved doing it. And I was strong as a bull. Like I could go and go and go. Like my stamina was incredible back then. Back then, but so I always enjoyed it. So I always lived in the moment, and I guess that's also why it works for my acting, because we just live in the moment. We don't think what's next. You just what's happening right now. So I didn't know that I was going to come back and this was going to happen or that was going to. I just knew that it was just about my training,
Mhm.
and I ran with that. And then my colleagues, my friends that were with me, this other students at the research center, they were just fabulous. Like I had people from the Odisha Dance Academy there, Manoranjan Pradhan, Vichitrananda Swami. They were my buddies from the academy. And then I had the girls that were at the research center as well. And we had a great time. And that was one part of my dance training in Odisha. But along with that, I would go to the Odisha Dance Academy, where my younger Guruji, Guru Gangadhar Pradhan, who's also passed away, I would finish the 9 hours of training in the Odissi Research Center. Then I would go by rickshaw to the Odisha Dance Academy and dance in the evening classes. So I had a constant, like, it was like I was just going nonstop. And it was like a frenzy. It was almost like I was possessed, and it just went and went and went and went. And then I came back to Canada, and then it was a whole new world. I felt like a different person. I was
Mhm.
a different person. I was a different dancer. I was a more evolved dancer. Um, and I was broke. And I was like, now what do I do? I was like, and that didn't fly back then. I mean, in our generation, it was like, okay, you have your dance, but you got to have a career. This isn't, but that wasn't my parents didn't expect that at all. They supported me fully through doing whatever I wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
But they also know that dance isn't an easy thing to survive on. You
Mm-hmm.
got to have something else. And I mean, we had the school, but we weren't a school that our academy wasn't into commercializing or everything was kind of word of mouth with us.
Mm-hmm.
Even to get grants, also we had people saying, these resources are available, and and Maz was like, she's very sweet and very innocent in a way, but then we were like, okay, let's look into it, and then we did, and then shows got funded, or
Mm-hmm.
sometimes you get operating funding or whatever, and that was great, but that was later on, not in the beginning at all.
Mm-hmm.
um, and then so we focused on the academy, and I got a side job, kind of what we call a Joe job. I was working in the bank and working at a restaurant. It was just
We've
like,
all we've all done those
we've
jobs.
all done that, right? And it's the life of an artist. and
Yeah.
and then I realized, oh boy, I became an artist when I was actually going to become a veterinarian. And
Oh,
so
okay.
yeah,
That's a
that
whole
was
other
like a whole
subject.
thing. The plan was to go to Guelph University and
Really?
become a vet. Yeah, but then when I was when Carol Star said, like, no, 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 send her to India, and she'll come, and she can stay. I'm at the research center, and so that's what I did. And
Mm-hmm.
Guruji's saying, go, you go.
Mm-hmm.
You just go.
Yep.
And I was like, okay, I'll go to school later. But then I got a friend of mine wanted to audition for the American Academy of Dramatic Arts in New York City. And so I was working at the bank in Dundas, near in Hamilton there, and she was like, "Come with me, come with me." I was like, "Okay, sure, whatever." And I went, and of course, like 2 weeks later, there's this big package in the mail saying, "Oh,
Excellent.
you've been accepted," or whatever, in New York City. And I didn't,
Yeah.
we did a regional audition here in Toronto, and so then I was sort of like, ooh. So my father was the one who really encouraged me to go to New York City. And he was the one who was like, you're not going to get an opportunity like that. This is special. And,
Wow.
it was a big deal and stuff. So I went, and I thought, okay. But I was always a very expressive child,
Mm-hmm.
as, even from very, very young. If somebody said, like, do this, I'd like sing a song, do that. I bust into a move, So I took direction well.
Good. Yeah. And
Yeah.
as you still would be, right?
And it was great, and the time that I had in New York was fabulous. And I was teaching. I found a multicultural exchange there called Lotus Fine Arts.
Oh.
The artistic director there is Kamal S. Caesar, and that was 6th Avenue and 27th Street area. And I taught there for 3 years. I had some Odissi classes there, and I performed. We performed at the Lincoln Center. Man Devraj came, and we did a performance at the Lincoln Center there, and we've had performances at Cherry Hill. We've actually performed more in the States than we have in Canada, which is
Mm-hmm.
crazy.
Mm-hmm.
But it's it's been a great performance journey for us,
Mm-hmm.
as far as in the 80s, 90s, early 2000s. We did a lot of touring in the States.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, then I came back. I got my associate's degree, performed in the company for a year, did some stuff out there. I choreographed at for The Secret Garden, and the musical in Jersey. Was it the Mill Street Theater? Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, I did a few. I stayed involved with dance during my time in New York, but I was able to also apply my craft as an actor there as well. And then when I came back, I was acting and dancing all the time since
And
then.
it still is, right?
And it still is, which
But
I'm very happy to say. I'm happy about
yes,
that.
well, and that's the thing though that I wanted to ask you is that year that you went and this idea of training all day long, like, it's that is what is required, right? That
Hmm.
is, and that's what isn't here. That like that in terms of
Yeah.
as a dance artist, you have the National Ballet School, you have contemporary dance schools that people have the same schedule, like it's like morning to night, you're just training and because that's what it takes. So I think if, I'm curious, if you hadn't done that, do you think you would have regretted it later and it would have changed the way that you even were able to work as an artist?
I have never had to been pushed into practicing. I've always, I think when I was working on a piece, I wouldn't stop until I felt satisfied that I got it, or I was just like ready to just collapse.
Mm-hmm.
And believe me, with that training in India, whew, I mean, that was just that 1 year. And even after that, I went back like
Mm-hmm.
in
Yep.
the summer times and stuff to go to my younger guru and train. But it definitely, it humbled me, and it definitely gave me perspective as to how far we can push ourselves
Mm-hmm.
and how far I would like to push my students. I say would like.
Mm-hmm.
um, yeah, it definitely would have. I think it would have changed the way I executed my schedule
Mm-hmm.
back when I came here, because also it's not only there's so many variables that affect us as far as how we practice here. First of all, the lifestyle and climate,
Mm.
and there's a thing, this thing, time. This word time that people talk about. I don't have time. I get that I don't have time. There's so much going on, and it's more about time management here rather than like just pushing yourself. That's what I've experienced with being a teacher and
Mm-hmm.
being growing up as a very young guru here. um, the lifestyle here is it's something that you have to work with the parents on, and
Mm-hmm.
it's a team effort as far as nourishing a child with being raised as a Canadian, being a student, going to school here in Canada, and learning something that caters to their roots and makes them more of a multifaceted person. And a lot of the kids that we've taught, after the ones that really hung in there and stayed with us for about, let's say, maybe 10, 15 years, they grow up and they say, I wouldn't be the person I was if I didn't have dance in my life, if I didn't grow
Mm.
up with that kind of discipline,
Right.
and I don't see that anymore.
Oh, no?
No, no. I mean, I don't. I wish I had students that were could give more time, because I think if they did, maybe it would be a bit different for them. But it's hard. I mean,
Mm.
they're growing up with stuff that we didn't grow up with. It's we didn't have devices, right? I
Yes.
mean, we had like our dance floor, a piano maybe, some skating lessons, and a bike outside. I had grass and like a lawn and the floor, and I had trees. I'd be climbing trees. I'd be in the dirt. But now there's allergies, and there's like the tablets and stuff. And for me, being an expressive child means like up and out,
Mm-hmm.
not zoning in. And what's happened, I think, with this generation is that everything has come in, come in, come in, come in, whereas with the dance and everything else, it's got a crescendo, not decrescendo. So
Mm-hmm.
I find that the energy has decrescendo, kind of like done this, and so you start to get posture changing, and
Mm-hmm.
that they have to go somewhere to become physical.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we've learned now with this lockdown and everything that you can stay home and be physical, but it's hard. It's hard to do that.
But I mean, I think that, yeah, I mean, now the devices, like we were talking to Pandit Swapan Chaudhary, who is, he just turned 75 this year, but he was
Yeah.
talking about when he grew up in Calcutta. And, at that time, he also, I think when his father, he did come from a musical family, but it wasn't like he was like the lineage that he had to take on, and that it was expected that he's going to pursue this, but he was definitely encouraged to do it. And he actually did an economics degree. It wasn't like that was it for his life, but he was talking about the fact that there weren't all these distractions. of
Yeah.
Facebook and phones. Like there was nothing that we had that even even in my when I was learning, it was like if I wanted to make a phone call to when I was in India, I'd have to go to the booth and and hope that it
Yeah.
worked. So and or I remember when internet first came and it was like waiting like 15 minutes to go to the next
Yeah, I
page.
know. I remember that when I was in Mumbai, that happened to me as well. It was like, oh, I can do emails. It's like I'm waiting. I'm like, do
And
you
now
have?
everything is at our fingertips, but then we become like slaves to these devices. But then our devices, like what we're using right now, is a tool that we're able to also
Exactly. And I
access
think
a
it's
lot
the
more.
it's a constant trying to find the balance.
Hmm.
It's a yogic philosophy. I'm going to devote I'm going to check my screen time and I'm going to make sure that I don't use my phone as much as I did yesterday or whatever. I mean, check a schedule or check your email when you're on the road, but to be everybody's down and doing that. And I just find that there's a huge difference of what I was like when I was 5 and what children to and that is normal. I mean, it is supposed to happen. There evolvement does happen, but not to the detriment of the physical being.
So don't you think, though, with the lockdown, that this would be a time for Riaz, for, students who, I find for myself too, it's been a really creative because we have to, because the
Yeah,
world is on pause. We have all the technology that is allowing us to do things. But, I've always seen with your company shows, because I remember seeing one way back when at the Harborfront Center, and then I think you did a few at the Leah Poslan's Theater. But your standard of students is nothing different from what you would, and I've seen so much dance in India. So whatever I saw in your shows, the standard of Odissi is nothing less than what I have seen in
we've
India. So
tried
you've
very
always
hard.
approached it. So, but you've always approached it in terms of how you train. It's not just a cultural dance school, right? It's like you're training the students in the same way that they would be trained in India, and
Absolutely.
so you like don't find now that the ones because in any generation there's going to be the one or two that are really serious, right?
Yeah,
So I would think that this would be a time to also for yourself, Devraj, for your mom, to reflect on and revisit a lot of older pieces, or even for the young, for the ones who are now just training to actually take that time to train.
absolutely. I agree completely. I mean, I think I'm finding that I mean, I was speaking with Randy
Hmm.
the other day, and she was like, but this was when she was like stuck in India, and she was there for the lockdown, and she
Oh, okay.
said she was like, "Oh, I'm having a great old time. I'm just writing and dancing." You know, it's a luxury to have. Like
That's
for an
right.
artist, like it's a terrible thing, this lockdown, in so many ways, but in some ways, it's fantastic. I mean, families are spending more time together and artists are being able you can zone out and just like focus on something. And I was just telling Ma this morning, I was like, Ma, this piece is like, we were talking about a little Abina, and I was like, could you teach me this? I did, it's her choreography, and I never learned it. She was like, yeah. And I was like, I actually have time to do this, you
Hmm.
know? And I think that's fabulous. But, some parents are telling me that their kids are sleeping in till 1 o'clock in the afternoon. I'm just like, oh, God. I was just like, sorry, I shook the camera, but I was just like, well, I've seen kids that can't touch their toes and they're 7 years old, and it's not a bone structure thing, or it's because there's no flexibility. There's a lack of physical, activity. So yeah, I would say parents should, get on that and really make
But even
sure.
the students, like, so tell me what it was like. Now you talked about how your mother started the school, and that's how you became part of it. But it's certainly dance, Indian classical dances, and the activity of learning has been there for the last 40 years in every, I would say, every single suburb in any North American city and in Hawaii,
Yeah.
which is also part of America, but
Yes.
even that remotely, right?
And Alaska.
Yes, yes. I'm sure you'll find it and anywhere. And that, that's a great reflection of how much integrity and timelessness there is in classical art forms, because
Yeah,
they originated at a certain time, but were banned, were not even, promoted, and did not have any kind of any stage, any platform for performing once temple dancing was banned, once when the whole court dance system was shut down, and then there was this, long period of time before independence in India, before the classical arts even had any patronage. So it's a great testament to the fact that they survived, and people will still always keep practicing them, right?
yeah.
No matter where people are in the world. But how is it different now from, say, when you were growing up, like when you were talking about, in terms of the students? I know that we always want to keep encouraging people, to learn, right? But at the same time, you want to have the integrity, and it's not just some kind of activity for the sake of
Yeah.
saying that I've done this,
Yeah, it's changed, I guess, also because um, it's more accessible to present
Mm.
any art form. I mean, you and I, because you're right there with me. You're my colleague, and I mean, we've all danced on many of the Toronto stages of many festivals or many, but the presenters have also changed. So I feel that there was more authentic, traditional classical dance presented more so than now.
Hmm.
It's our when I say our, I mean in classical dance, any genre. It doesn't have to be just Odissi, but I will speak as far as Odissi goes. It's really hard to get someone now to. There are less invites. Let me put it that way.
Hmm.
Blatantly honest, it's just, and I feel that because ever since, I would say since since 2000, when the word Bollywood came into our lives. I mean, I don't know what that word means. I mean, I do know what it means, but I don't. It's become it's a place now. It's a style of dance now. It is in the dictionary now. But since that word and that style has entered our lives, I feel that it's come in and classical dance has sort of just taken a side. And if it's presented, it's only certain type of targeted audiences that kind of enjoy it, or I mean, there hasn't been a way to present things together
Hmm.
in Toronto and surrounding, or maybe even in Canada. I feel that I shouldn't have to go to a special festival, let's say in Vancouver, the Kokoro Festival, or whatever festival there is, to perform my dancing, to present Odissi,
Hmm.
where it hasn't been given a chance to really be realized by new people in Canada what Odissi classical dance is, or what Kathak is, real, authentic, tradition preserved dance.
Hmm.
So for me, that's what's changed, is that, all these festivals that are happening, they're saying, oh, it's Indian dance. And they categorize Indian dance, and whether it's Bollywood or folk or Garba or Bharatanatyam or whatever it is, it's all in one category to the mainstream audiences.
Hmm.
Whereas before, I would have been able to explain, get up on a stage and explain what it is. There's no time now in these festivals. It's like an assembly line, just like
Hmm.
go, 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 and it's not as organized as I would like it to be. Before, I found it was more organized.
Well, I think part of what's happened also is, there's a lot of discussion about the word diversity too, right? Because now all of a sudden, in the last, say, 10 years, diversity or cultural diversity has
Yeah,
become a priority, because up until, maybe 10 or 20 years ago, even though Indian classical dance, and even the word Indian is, it's a this all encompassing thing, but now then it became South Asian classical, or
hmm,
South Asian forms, right? But all of a sudden, there has been this recognition that predominantly Western European based traditions have enjoyed predominance. So now there is more funding priority. However, we're not seeing that reflected, because so many years have gone
yeah,
in promoting just European based traditions, and that's still that's still the case, especially in the dance presenting world. It's
Yeah.
something that, people like to talk about the need for diversity, but diversity becomes this all-encompassing thing. So it's not even just South Asian or Indian. It's like black, it's flamenco. It's like it's
Yeah,
we're all put into this one category
absolutely.
and so even within that realm, you're fighting for space, right? And then
And
we're
that's the
separate.
and that's the thing, and that's exactly it. And but the point is that if you throw everything in one pot, sure, you like it's like throwing a whole bunch of ingredients in a pot for dinner, and they're all wonderful ingredients, but you're not going to be able to identify it. It's all going to taste like one big blob. You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
And
And there's a beauty. If I'm going to see flamenco, I want to see flamenco, and then yes, do some fusion if you want to. It's always been the kathak and the flamenco. Okay, great. And that I found that very exciting. But I also want to be able to understand the the solo, like its own bubble, like
mhm,
kathak in its own, respectfully, in its own site. Like when I see that and it's explained to me, then I'll understand what Kathak is all about. Then I feel I can appreciate it more once it's fused with something else. But if
mhm.
I'm constantly fusing stuff because it's great and it's cool, and like we're collaborating, and that's amazing to do, but people still haven't seen or learned anything about what the original is, you
Right.
know? So if
Mhm.
Odissi, people say, oh, wow, that's such a beautiful movement and it's a collaboration. I'm like, well, that comes from Odissi. And then they're like, well, what's Odissi? But they
Yeah,
haven't
well,
had a chance to
and
see it.
so isn't this the interesting thing that even after 40 years, you still have to explain that, and that the only places that you could see Odyssey might be at an ethnic festival or and not mainstream dance, right?
Yeah,
And this aspect of, I mean, fusion itself is such a, like, it's a big can of worms in terms of, because really anything that exists today is a fusion of the past and who you are as an artist, right? But this aspect of making Odissi or making Kathak contemporary for the basically the white European audience is also a type of colonization. That, why should you have to change or alter the way that you're presenting your art form, what you want to present, in a way that's going to be palatable to them, because that's a
yeah.
colonial perspective, right?
There are many, many non-South Asian people who have said to me, after I've explained that it has been fused, if we're watching a piece or I did it to make it easy, they're like, well, why? I want to see they
Mm,
want to see the original. They
right.
want to see the tradition. They appreciate it so much. And I think, why did we do that? We're like, it's almost like we're insulting their intelligence. Like
But
and I don't want to do that. It's not to, um, take somebody for granted or anything. But at the same time, I think we got used to that in a certain way. And when I say we, I'm talking very generally here,
mhm,
which I shouldn't do. But because we're traditionalists, we try to keep Odissi as, like, it is authentic. You get a solid product from us.
mhm,
And we have fused and collaborated with other upon request,
mhm,
or and I've never put a student on stage unless I feel that she's ready, because we also have a responsibility, not just to the child or the student or their parents, but to the craft itself, to the art form
mhm,
itself. I can't I have to make sure that it's presentable to an audience, and when we say audience, we're talking about the three kinds. We've got the gods and our gurus and our audience.
mhm,
These are the Kandi Pranam is what has to maintain.
mhm,
And I think that people realize this now. Like when I
mhm.
say that, I'm talking about the mainstream audiences, the non-South Asians. They do realize that there is an authentic form that
Mhm.
is not always presented when it comes to classical art form.
And so that's so interesting that you were talking about your students, that you won't put somebody on stage without a certain amount. But now with Facebook and with Instagram, like,
Oh
people are
yeah,
posting all the time. It's become so easy to perform, even if
Yes.
it's not, I mean, now it's not live audiences, and who knows when we'll get to a point where we can comfortably have live audiences again. But this aspect of, so this is the part of the reason of the whole concept of sadhana, and trying to develop this awareness, because I think we've gone beyond that point where at one time you didn't go on the stage until after so much, like you don't even think, and this is something that Shashwati Didi was talking about with the Kathak artists, that when she was learning, there was never any talk about performance. There was, it's like you have to do the work and you have to train. Yes, it is a performance art. Ultimately, that's what, but then the whole focus, especially here, is when is the student recital? When is when is the presentation, right?
Yep.
And
Yep.
now it's gone to a whole other level because of social media.
Yeah.
And so, in terms of losing the integrity of the art form, but I think that, Odissi, as like I said, the fact that these arts have existed and didn't die out, didn't without any patronage, is I never worry about that they're gonna fall apart, because there's enough people like you who will not let that happen. But I think, in terms of the main stages in Canada especially, it's ridiculous that we're at a point 40 years later where we're still having these same conversations, or
Yeah.
trying to educate. And now there's awareness about but it's taken so long, even about indigenous awareness, about indigenous
Oh my
cultures,
gosh. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So,
Oh,
but I'm hoping that this pandemic maybe is a pause, is putting a pause on everything that was happening, so that we might come back and say, because I think this is also an important moment to reflect on what have we been doing, so you were talking about this Abhinaya piece. So I wanted to ask you, because I know that we can go on forever talking
I
about all these
know.
different
I
things.
know.
But tell me about this Abhinaya piece. And because you have so much experience, you're doing acting work. I know you just went to North Bay, and you're constantly working as an actor. But when you come to Abhinaya, which is, it's a expression, a form of expression that's really unique to Indian classical dances, because all of them have their own aspect of Abhinaya. How is it different, and what are you doing now that you feel like you're doing for the first time, or that this is the time that you have to do it?
I think because um, time, I talked about time earlier, and um, the abhinayas, the abhinayas that come from the old poets, the ancient poets, and the texts and the scriptures that we are blessed with, that we found, and we take these little poems and sonnets and songs, and we turn them into these expressive pieces
Mm-hmm.
through dance, through abhinaya. For me, it's new every time because I'm a day older. Every time I grow and evolve, my abhinaya grows and evolves. So a piece that I may have learned when I was 14, if I do it today, it's going to be very different because of life experiences and how I have evolved emotionally,
Mm-hmm.
mentally, spiritually, uh, physically. Hope not too much has changed. We try, but um, it's an elevation with abhinaya. I've always felt very comfortable doing it. I
Mm-hmm.
guess because I love being in somebody else's shoes.
Mm-hmm.
Rather than, it's more comfortable not to get away from my place and escape into a story.
Right.
I've always loved a good story. I love, one of my biggest hobbies, when they say write down your hobbies, I'm like watching movies, or just like getting into a story. And so for me, I've really been able to surgically take it apart, like
Mm-hmm.
how I will apply myself to an abhinaya. And I don't really actually academically take it apart. What I do is I just sort of, it's a lot about thinking. I've told a lot of my students, when they're doing abhinaya, it's 80% thinking and 20% physical. You have to think that way because
Mm-hmm.
you have to work from the inside out.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the application I use in acting as well.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like, when you tell somebody to smile and they do the whole Colgate thing, they're like, oh, it's like, we're smiling, but the smiling has to come, like your smile right now is it's organic. You're smiling because you smile from inside, and then it comes out. So I've always felt that, hearing the lyric, like one line, for instance, and where the story starts, where it takes you, what's the character's arc, and where it ends up is the key. Even for one line, if it's a Radha to Krishna, like an abhinay or Uriya abhinay would be like, let's say, Patha, Patha chhadi dere, mu jibi phulo tori re bonamari. Okay, if I'm saying something else, so what that is my path. He's like, she's basically saying, get out of my way. Please move. Okay, I'm going. These are my steps. I'm gonna go pick flowers. Hey Krishna, Bonamali, right? So that's a small line, but I am being Ellora, the Nartaki, or Ellora, the dancer, becoming Radha, and also imitating Krishna, or saying like, you, Krishna, you. So I can be, so many different characters, but how to become that? You have to believe it, first of all. I never, like, I know you know this too, because you're the same. But working with you and knowing you, we automatically just get into it, right? We feel right away. Again, with time and this generation, there, like, not everybody has, I think everybody has the ability to do it, but everybody has some sort of wall that they have to break through.
Distraction.
Exactly. Right? There's distraction, and there's an amazing focus needed. And my big thing is passion and compassion. These are two key ingredients for Abhinav, for me anyway. You have to feel for those characters, and in order to become those characters, we have to feel for them. Not mainly feel sorry for them, but there's an understanding that has to happen, no matter how melodramatic it might seem. Like for us, it's like when we're in it, it's not melodramatic. But like some people will look at it from the outside and go, oh my God, that's just, I can't do it. That's a very contemporary way of looking at it. So you have to break out of that, this modern day society that we're in, and go back. It is an ancient art form. It comes from an ancient civilization. So there has to be an understanding, and that time travel is needed to go, to get in and under it, and just sink your teeth into it and relish in it, feel. And that's where the enjoyment and the pleasure comes from.
I'm so glad. I'm so glad you done it, because I was going to ask you to if you can give us an example of
that's a very that's one of that's a very that's an old Odia song that Radha is singing, and of course she's pleading with Krishna to get out of her way because she has to do puja for him.
And this aspect of you're a day older, because I know that a lot of times when young girls are learning dance and they have to do these dances about Radha and Krishna, and how without all those experiences, but really how you evolve as a, like what you were saying, that these are not just cultural stories that somebody's telling. You're trying to embody, how would that person feel? How you, as a person, when you have the experience of certain things, how do you bring that into the what you're doing with your hands and with your face? Because it's not just an external activity.
No, and we don't have the gift of using our tool of voice as dancers, right? We've been given the gift of sign language through the Natya Shastra, right? And the Navarasa, and this all comes from the Shastra, and we're supposed to utilize our hands with the angikam, with the use of our limbs and facial expression, without the use of voice, and because of that, we need to overextend, right? Because we've lost one power. And so we have to really like put it out in 3D form in a way where it's, there's a subtlety and softness and suppleness and sometimes ferociousness, but it has to be done within the realms of classical, like, let's say Odissi.
With the aesthetic,
Yes, exactly. But I've always said within that, like, because some people go, well, classical, there's so many rules and there's so much this and that, but I go, within that you find your freedom. Because once you've practiced and you're confident, there's a freeness where you can just let go, and I've seen it through the style of Kathak, Bharatanatyam, Kuchipudi, or Odissi, and folk dancing as well. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, when there's a confident dancer, a really well seasoned dancer, you know there's a freeness within
Mm-hmm.
that, and that's the joy that the audience can and they can enjoy it together. The play of like with the abhinaya, the storytelling, like throwing it out to the audience, and the audience captures it, and you can feel the energy of the audience. It's not a cosmic thing; it's a true thing. We've
Mm-hmm.
all experienced it.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't just happen when they clap. It's about feeling that energy during that time, during that execution.
Well, I don't know if we'll have that interaction
I
right
know.
now, but this is really so important because this was one of the main questions from the Kathak emerging artists about this aspect of Abhinaya and how, because yeah, we're in this place that's so different from even being in India. Just even practicing Indian classical art is feels very foreign, or we're in this isolated place. So but even this aspect of getting into abhinaya, you feel like you're on your own and
Yeah.
you're isolated. So this passion compassion, I think, is I'm gonna share this video with especially those artists, because they're so they're young in their 20s, and they want to dance all these the Radha Krishna, any kind of story like that, but
Yeah.
like how do this aspect of thinking that you need to be taught it by somebody, and just learn the movements of the flowers and all that, and that's how you're going to get it, and you just practice. But it's really about this
It's
internal
very important
work.
with Abhinaya that they're involved in the story. For any student, that's the advice I can give, that they have to understand the story, read it, and also along with the music as well. The music is like, and you have to be careful with music because music can be very manipulative. With acting, a lot of people like to listen to their headphones right before they go on stage. But if
Hmm.
you listen to the wrong kind of music, it's not, you're, that first entrance you make, it's not going to work, it'll take you somewhere else. But so the music that, okay, let's say you were learning an abhinaya, that particular music, listening to that music and understanding how the technical, like the mathematics of whatever tal it's set to and what rag it's set to, that brings in the bhav along with the technical execution. That when they both like float together on like through the dance, you will find that the breath goes that way, your heart starts to beat that way, along with that, it just all unionizes and harmonizes into one, everything becomes one. You with the dance, with the music, with the lyrics, with the audience, with the Lord, with whatever, whoever is up there for you, or down here, or beside you, or whatever it is, with Ma Bhumi. I mean, it all has to, the idea is to blend it to one and find that balance, which is yogic philosophy, which is
Hmm.
where our dancing comes from. It all comes from the yogic philosophy of balance and harmony. And I just I and not to rush, have patience.
Mm.
I just like, I teach an item, I might be in the middle of something, and then one student will be like, so what's next? I'm just like,
Just
I
worry
worked
about
on this
this right
piece for
now.
a year. I mean, that's classical dance. You learn a few steps and then you're on your way. It doesn't work that way. It's
Well, and that's, like I think until you actually start doing it, you don't like really getting into it. Like it's like even going to India for a year, you're like, there's no way what am I going to do in a year? Like
yeah.
it's like you realize there's no end to it, right? But
Oh, I know.
until,
I mean, I was finding sometimes I was falling asleep, like, and I'd be like, just trying to get the rhythm of like something was off and I wasn't quite getting it on my pillow. I'd be lying on my pillow and I'd just be like, and it's, because it's somebody else might say, oh, well, that's obsessive compulsive. I was like, well, we can put labels
I
on it,
think you
but
need
it
to
got me
be.
to where I got to, I got it eventually. I wouldn't, some of us wouldn't stop until we're about to throw up, you know,
Well,
but
but insanity is one of those, I think, prerequisites, right? For
yeah, absolutely. I know. I was just like, why did I become an actor again?
and so
Oh, I
speaking
like it.
But speaking of this, because we were talking about how in like the internal work that you do as an actor and how you use that in abhinaya. So can you talk just as the last thing of how it works the other, it feeds the other, like how do you how has your abhinaya and your classical Odissi helped you, and how do you use that in your acting, if there is a way
I think
that you channel
it's
it?
the same idea. I mean, there have been acting books that have been translated into Odia. Stanislavski's
Mm-hmm.
has been translated, and it's really interesting. I think it would help the actors, who don't, whose first language is in English. But it's very interesting you said that, because at one point in New York, my artistic director Harrietta, who's no longer with us, she said, I really feel like your dancing caters to your acting. And she'd never seen my dancing. She just knew that I was an Indian classical dancer. When I was in India, Bade Guruji, Sarat said that, this acting that you do, it helps your abhinaya. And so I list both sides of the world. The East is saying this
Mm-hmm.
about, and the West is saying how my acting and my dancing, abhinaya, they've always run on parallel tracks. And I didn't even realize that.
Mm-hmm.
Application, technically, once again, it's like, there's a story in front of me. And like, I just finished doing this a Christmas movie, one of those
Mm-hmm.
things. It's like one scene,
Yes, and
but I had,
that's like Odissi related, right?
yeah, it's not though, this is though, but it has nothing to do it. But what I'm executing, as far as what my story is, what my journey is in that one little scene, is like I applied it the same way. I was like, okay, I have this to do. This is what my activity is. And and you find everybody has a way of doing things
Mm-hmm.
differently. Some people say their method, and or whatever. But I think what it is mostly is understanding my situation and what are my stakes, how high are my stakes, what do I have to get done here, or what what they say, oh, what's my motive? But that's, what's your
Mm-hmm.
intention?
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise you're
Your
standing there stagnant.
objective, yeah.
Exactly. So Radha has to get flowers, and she has to pass this obstacle. Krishna is in her way. So how does she get around him? What do I need to do? I need to see him. I'll place him there first of all. I
Mm-hmm.
have to see him, even though if somebody's not really there. I have to imagine. You have to have an imagination like you were when you were a kid. I
Mm-hmm.
find that, like, that play that we used to do. Let's pretend, I'll be Wonder Woman and you be Superman, and I really was Wonder Woman. I was doing
You
the
really,
whole bullet
you still
thing.
can't, you still are, right? So
We all are. We're all Wonder
you
Women.
still become Wonder Woman, right?
But yeah, be it believing it, becoming it. If I believe it, they'll believe it.
Mm-hmm.
The audience, my audience is not. I'm not going to take my audience for granted. They know what's going on. They can
Mm-hmm.
smell a rat. You cannot take your audience for granted, and that's the main thing. You can't pretend. It has to be real. Make it real for yourself, then it'll be real for everyone else.
And same thing on camera, right? Because right now we don't have it, audiences,
Right. And
but
that's, yeah, and
when you
that's the
approach,
sad thing. That's
but no, but
that's
you
what
would.
I cry about. I'm crying about the fact that, theater and dance is really, the last is that's going to come back, because we don't
Mm-hmm.
have it. And how
Mm-hmm.
are we going to have it? Film and TV, we've just started.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so, yes,
But
do,
it's the same work though, translating that on camera, right? Because
yes, it is.
thinking of
If
that person watching, and are they going to believe it if you don't believe it, right?
and would and acting on camera is not the same as acting on stage.
Mm-hmm.
It's not, because we have to hit that back row. They have to be able to read us, the ones that are, everybody's up in the balcony or in the bleachers or whatever. And on camera, it's like, there's like, your face is like right there, and you're in people's living rooms, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, we can't do the big, it's much more subtle on camera than it is. If I even, like, lift an eyebrow, or like, just do a look like that,
Mm-hmm.
it's quite a lot on screen.
Mm-hmm.
If I do this on stage, I've got to be lit right. If, we've done those spotlight abhinayas where we're like, everything is very, very soft and whatever, but the light has to hit us the right way, and we need to angle ourselves so that that far back row can see us.
Mm-hmm.
So, everything must be much bigger theatrically. It's, we're using, they say I'm using my acting voice, because that is what we need to do to reach. We have to project to reach the back row when we're not mic'd. Now we're,
Mm-hmm.
now everything's mic'd and easy.
But
I'm going to
if
wear
you
a laugh.
but then you have technical problems with those, right? So
Yeah,
technical
yeah.
issues sometimes.
Nothing's better than being authentic,
But if you had
old
to
school.
choose one or the other as your favorite, stage
Oh,
versus
stage.
stage.
I'm sorry. I love the fact that you have more control on stage and like,
Mhm.
it's more fun and it's live and exciting. And
But
when
you can't do another take.
take schmake, take schmake, I mean, you do it and then you're done. And it's like, then they take it, they do things with it, they edit it
Mhm,
and post it and blah, blah, blah. But with theater, it's like, it's there, it's now, and your audience is with you. It's happening in the moment, and
mhm,
that's what's exciting.
mhm,
It's just, and we have more control. We're not puppeted around like we are on set. I
mhm.
mean, I love doing this, the film and TV. It's fun. I work with wonderful people. Everybody's great, and I have a lot of fun on set. But theater is magical.
Mhm.
It's yeah, you know.
Yeah, no, but I mean, it's like the dance shows, you're lucky if you do three in a row, right?
Yeah.
Theater, you do it at least a 2 week run, sometimes
Mhm.
longer, right? And
Yeah.
so then it becomes, is it every night that's magical, or, how is it more, the more you do it, the more you love it?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I've always felt like, with certain plays and stuff, how it started, it ended up, because you got a chance to keep, like really
Working.
polishing it and working on it and airbrushing this and tweaking that, and you get another chance.
Hmm.
And with film and TV, there's always this pressure, like, oh my God, it's going to be there forever.
Yes, that's right.
It's like done.
Yeah, no, but
So,
well, I mean, we will get back to a point where we do have live theater. It's just what we can't
yeah,
say when. I mean, there's
yeah.
all kinds of speculation,
Ichha, yes, yes.
but
Ichha Bhagwan ki, inshallah, I hope, Lord.
but this is a moment to do that more of that sadhana though, in terms of just practicing and working on
Yes,
abhinaya, working on your technical training, whatever that needs to happen.
truth, absolutely. This is the time when people say they don't have time. We have time now. Now's the time to create and don't go crazy. Like there's no need to go crazy presenting. Create, and
Hmm.
build on top of that. I'm hoping that the South Asian art forms the traditional ones because that's where I come from, will have more of an opportunity to stay standing.
Hmm.
I'm hoping that that will be the case and that their quality will stay, pure and strong. That's what I'm hoping for all of the art forms that
Well,
we
they
have.
always have. So, like I
They
said,
have,
they
as
always
far as
have.
I'm concerned, they have. I just hope they continue because, like, we're doing what we can
Hmm.
with what we have, and I think there should be some, I encourage parents to encourage their children to at least try it, an authentic way. Like we've done our best to keep it keep it the way it is in India,
Yeah,
as much as possible,
yeah.
but communicate to the kids in a way that they'll understand because they're being raised as Canadian kids.
Hmm.
And it doesn't necessarily mean that we have just Odia kids. We've had Bangladeshi students and Bengali and Punjabi and Gujarati, all kinds, like South Indian. It's but there is a way to communicate as the teacher as well, But I think there's it's going to be a fresh start after this,
A
you know,
reboot,
a
right?
reboot, much needed reboot.
But I think it's great. I mean, I can see just from your backdrop that you have a really lovely studio space and
It is
environment
lovely.
in
Yeah, it's
Brampton. So
lovely.
I
We've
hope
got
I hope more not just the South Asians of Brampton, but there are other people who live there. I know. So
there's got to be.
no,
I wish
I've
I had
seen.
more time to
I
explore. We've
it's
only
been
been here a short
It's
while. We're from
I
Brampton.
did perform at the Rose Theater last year, so it's not just South Asians in
No, I mean
there's
Brendan
a
Healy used to be one of my directors from.
yeah,
Remember at the
that's how I
Sapphire?
so
He was there
that's
for a long time, and
yeah.
he's lovely, and he loved the Rose Theater and what they have to offer here. I just haven't explored Brampton. I haven't been here very long. I mean, I'm a Toronto girl. I leave the house, I go to Toronto, I come back, and it's like a whole day is gone. So I haven't had a chance to really explore it. But
Well,
we've been
now is
talking about
not the time. Now is not the time to explore it.
no, no,
But
I'm staying in.
and hopefully, I know you're doing Zoom classes, but I hope that the Odissi, the awareness about that, there is an academy, there is a place that if people want to take it seriously and want to train seriously, that they will come looking for you.
Odissi dance, Odissi music, and Hindustani music as well through Devraj as well. I
Mhm.
mean, it's all here. And I mean, I'm not a big fan of Zoom classes, but I'll take what I can get right now. If somebody wants to learn, it's here.
This is the universe we live in. So
That's right.
thanks so much though for talking. This has been really insightful about all these aspects and experiences, and I think that all the artists, the emerging artists in sadhana, as well as audiences, are really going to enjoy listening to this.
All my love to the emerging artists of sadhana and Pratibha Arts, and you. Thank you, Bhagyashree, for having me. It was fun, like you said. It was absolutely fun.
Thanks, Alora.
Okay.